Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you? Oh my God, my ring light got me looking okay.
Good. What'd you say?
No, the ring light was showing the circles in my face. I mean, in my glasses, so I just took them off.
With your glasses, right, right, right. Wow, I'm so happy to see you on. How you been today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Great, great. I'm doing awesome. Well, I'm super excited about this because being the fact that I'm in the life insurance industry, I get a lot of I get a lot of questions about wills and trusts and things of that nature. So I'm happy to have you on. And you all that's tuning in, this is Sabine. She is an awesome lawyer. But I have to say, I want to put this out here that we're having a dialogue and she will be talking about things, but it is information. It is not legal advice. You would need to reach out to her and book a consultation. So I just
Thank you for saying that.
thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to dive in. Let me see where I want to start. I guess we can start with the difference between a will and a trust. Break that down for us.
Sure. So, a will and a trust are both documents that you could use to sort of plan for, tomorrow, plan for your legacy, plan for what you want to be done with your assets. They have different functions, so they're a little bit different. So a will would allow you to, yes, say, who you want your, anything that you own of value during your lifetime. Who would you want that to go to in the event that you passed away? Or, will also allow you to say if you have young children, who you would want to take care of your children in the event that you passed away. And so that's what a will kind of, pretty much does. That you can get a little bit particular. Wills can be a little bit complex. But the major difference between a will and a trust is that a will requires you still to go through the probate system. And what that means is you still have to go to court. So a lot of times people think that if you die with a will, that you don't have to go to court. There was a will, so we didn't have to go to court. You still do. Go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I was agreeing because I know that a will can be contested, and I wanted to about that. So you still have to go to court even if a will is not contested.
Well, yes, even if a will is not contested, because the way that you pretty much enforce a will, the way that you get the rights to be able to transfer over, ownership of whatever those assets are that the person left behind, you need to file that in the court. So with a will, it's called probate. If somebody dies without a will, it's administration. So most states pretty much are consistent with, those labels. And so, yes, whether or not it's contested, you still have to go to court. When it's contested, it just makes it take a lot longer, and it may be more costly. Usually, is more costly.
Wow.
And so, mhm.
Okay. So with a do a person need to have a certain amount of wealth? How would one need to know whether a will is best for them or if a trust is best for them?
So I'll just finish explaining with the trust and how that's different from a will. A trust basically allows you to avoid that probate process. So you can still leave, your assets to your family. You can do a lot more flexible planning for your family, and the trust actually you can, function and use it the same way that you're functioning with your current assets. You can use it during your lifetime. So it gives you that flexibility. It puts your plan already in place. And so if, for instance, you were to get ill or sick, or you can't make decisions for yourself, because you appointed a person who's called a trustee, the person who you want to, basically run all of the affairs that the trust owns, because you put that person in place, if you become ill or unwell, that person could just step in. There's no need for court intervention. There's no need for any of that stuff. So it's sort of a better planning tool. But now, because a trust can be a little bit expensive depending on, what your assets are and where you are in life. If you have assets probably over 100,000, or if you have, real estate, those are some things that you want to start considering having a trust for. If you're less than 30,000, probably you don't want to have that expense, because the process for court is a little bit easier when you're dealing with small funds or low funds. Not that it's, small, but just in perspective.
Yes.
So the court process is a little bit easier. So if you have over 100,000, then you really want to start protecting that, because once you end up in court, there can be fees if you don't appoint the right people. The court could appoint someone for you, and then the fees could go up from there.
Got it. Got it. So someone asks, so does the trust trump everything?
Well, I wouldn't. Okay, if your trust has to be funded. So I'll say that. So your trust has to be funded in order to trump everything, like you said. So in order for the trust to be able to control and stop all your assets from going through the court system, you really need to have transferred your assets to the trust. So instead of it being, Jamel's bank account, it's going to be Jamel's trust account. You know what I mean? And so once the trust has that control, then yes, it could keep you out of court and keep you, out of, sort of conflict with your family and things like that.
Yes, then that's a big thing, because I know a lot in other communities, a lot of times they leave their life insurance wealth to go in a trust. So
Mm-hmm.
there is no bickering and, fighting back and forth with the family members. And like you said, the trustee is able to handle and manage everything how the person had that set. So
Yeah.
trust be,
There's say that again.
can a trust be contested as well?
A trust can be contested, if somebody is unhappy with not being, left a certain asset, they can try to drag the trust into court, right? But if your trust is properly drafted, you can, avoid losing a lot of those assets. And particularly with, certain language that you could put in the trust, that if somebody does contest it, then they're automatically out. So a lot of times it wouldn't make sense for somebody to go ahead and, contest and try to fight to get something out of the trust if it's drafted properly. So it's not impossible to bring a trust into court, but generally it doesn't happen, because if somebody went through all of the effort of, getting a lawyer, paying for a trust, drafting a trust, funding the trust, it's like, okay, I think they knew what they wanted to do, with that. So
Got it.
you mentioned the thing about life insurance, and how a lot of people leave their life insurance to their trust. And the other reason why that's good, in addition to avoiding conflict, is because if the person who they left that life insurance to pass away, then that life insurance might get stuck within that company, or maybe in the Office of Unclaimed Funds or something like that. So there's a lot of good reasons why you'd want to have a trust in order to protect those life insurance funds.
Yes, I agree, because sometime people forget to put a contingent, or something can happen to the contingent with them at the same time. You never
Hmm.
know how things may happen. So I know you speak a lot on asset protection and transferring. Speak a little on that.
Yeah, I mean, so the whole idea of asset protection is just to make sure that you have a plan for, all that you own. The thing about it is, like, we learn one thing and we work so hard to go and acquire assets, invest in stocks, buy things, diversify, all that stuff. And then it's like there's no plan for it to get to the next generation, right? So there's all this buzz about generational wealth, but how are we getting it to the next generation? It's generational if you can pass it on,
That's
right? And so, right. And so that's the idea of asset protection. And it's not one size fits all. Like, there are similar tools that many attorneys use, but we also like to look at what is your particular picture look like, so that we could strategize on building something for you. And you can start, with simple documents like a power of attorney or a healthcare proxy, which are simple but important. And then you could build on. Maybe later on you need a trust. Will probably should be one of the minimal documents that you have as well, until you build up that wealth and you're like, okay, I probably need a trust at this point, so that you're passing it on to the generation. So that's what asset protection is. It's using different tools to make sure that the assets that you own, one, you minimize the odds of it, you having like lawsuits, being vulnerable to lawsuits. You minimize being vulnerable to bad debt. You minimize being vulnerable to, maybe bankruptcy and things like that, or just your assets being lost because nothing happened with it or nobody knew that it existed. So it's really, making sure you minimize those things and add on layers of protection as much as you can, which insurance is one of them. Life insurance is certainly one of them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the idea around that.
Got it. Got it. So I know it's pretty much no way that we can completely avoid drama in families, but I know typically in a family household, grandmother have 5 kids, nothing is in place. She family have to go through probate. It's a lot of fighting back and forth. Is there any way, is there any plan that people can put in place to keep that from happening?
I mean, well, yes, of course. I mean, if you do your, estate planning, your legacy planning, there's various ways that we could do to avoid that conflict within family. So doing a will, doing a trust, doing things like that, if that's right for you. But I would say another way to do it, say, planning is not in the cards for you or the finances aren't there for you to do it. I would say, being organized, anybody could write down their wishes, and really be detailed about what they'd like. One would hope the family would want to follow that. You could leave audio messages, recorded videos, you could really be detailed and get your stuff organized, knowing where having your birth certificates, your bank accounts, your bank statements, things like that listed and in an organized way so that everyone can access things. So when it's easier, it takes a little bit of the stress away. And then, hopefully the family could get along in somehow, some way. Like, you can't really predict how people are going to be, especially when money's involved and things like that. But you could do your best to make it as easy for them as possible by being organized and having stuff together.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Either way it goes, to come together and work at some point, because again, a lot of times there's no wills in place. There's not a trust in place as well. Yeah. It's just the house is paid for, it's left to all the children, and now they're left to pretty much battle it out on who's going to get what. And I've seen things get dragged and it's for a year after year.
Or more. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. That happens all the time, and it's unfortunate. And I would say a good thing to do, while you're alive, is to educate the members of the family that stand to inherit or who will be sort of in charge of what's going on, and stop with the secrecy. There's a lot of secrecy, like, oh, you're going to get the house, but everybody else is expecting it too. And so I think being open and honest, like, we kind of have to, put on our big boy and girl pants and kind of address these things while you're alive, to educate about the assets that you have. Like, what does it mean to own a property? What does it mean to pay taxes? What does it mean to get a mortgage? Not everybody knows this stuff or seeks out this information. What does it mean to own stocks and have a stock account and trade and all that stuff? Like, if those are types family and your loved ones, so that they're prepared to handle these type of things and they're not, either scrambling or confused. I had a family that I was dealing with, and there was a property that was left to 4 children, and 2 of the children were deceased. One of the children was incarcerated, and there were grandchildren involved. And so when the parents passed, they left the property to them. But because they could not get on one page, because some of them did not understand like what it means, like the taxes have to be paid and things like that, but it's a valuable asset because it was in an affluent area. Because of that, they end up losing the property to property tax liens. Wow. Because nobody could get on the same page. And it was just really, really unfortunate. And this type of thing happens all the time. It's really, really crazy. But it's lack of education and understanding. And, these people worked all their lives to buy this property, to pay it off, and for it to get lost. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, that's a situation where someone should have been grown enough to at least pay the taxes, things where they're like, well, we're not on the same page. I'm not paying it, but you failed them
Exactly.
that you paying it could have kept you all from losing the property.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. Someone said, I'm buy my first rental property, and of course, I'm going to need a lawyer. My question is how much in fees? Okay. Okay, you're going to have to go on her website and book a consultation. She'll be able to give you that information. But like you were saying,
Oh, you could DM me as well.
yes, go ahead, Sabine.
No, I was saying they could, if they want to DM, I'll direct them to the proper channels.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
And you were speaking on earlier because we definitely live in the time where the entrepreneurs are buying, they're waking up, they're buying property, and
Mm.
they do need to know how to transfer that wealth over. What would you say would be the first step for them to either keep in mind or how to embark upon that journey?
So I mean, it's hard to say that generally because different assets require different ways of transferring it and protecting it.
Okay.
I would say, at minimum, you want to have anybody over 18 should have a healthcare proxy and power of attorney. So that will allow the healthcare proxy allows somebody to jump in for you and say, for instance, if you are in the hospital, can't make health decisions for yourself, that will allow your agent, the person who you give that power to help make those decisions for you. How should you be cared for? What type of treatments should you have, etc. Right? And then the power of attorney will allow somebody to step in and make financial decisions for you. So if you guys are starting businesses, you have online businesses, you have side hustles and things like that, what happens if you are not able to make decisions tomorrow? Like, does your whole business go down the drain? Does everything fail because of that? Because nobody was able to, pay a bill or, things like that. Um, yeah, it happens all the time. Like, illness is one of the main reasons or main issues why businesses fail, like small businesses, because somebody got sick and they couldn't they couldn't run the business for a little bit. And, even though maybe they get better, a lot has been lost. And so making those little minor adjustments and decisions. And then you could do simple things like put your bills and stuff on auto pay if you can. Not everybody can do that, but to the extent that you can, and you can be organized with what all that you own, so that if somebody needs to help you out, they can help you out. So that's like simple, baby steps that you could start to take as you are planning and building this wealth.
Yes, thank you
Mhm.
for that. That is phenomenal. And of course, it's important for people to know that I know most people probably know already, but the power of attorney, it is no good when the person pass on. So that's why
Yeah.
it's important for them to have those contingencies and those plans in place because you help with estate planning and all of that. All of that pretty much ties in
hmm
together.
Yeah, that's all of that falls under asset protection. And legacy planning, it's kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, there's two different strategies, like one or two or different ways that you may be looking at it depending on the point in your life. Like if you're older, you may be looking at it like, how can I make sure that my assets get passed on but doesn't go to medical bills or health, home health care type of thing. If you're young, you're looking at how can I protect these assets, make sure I don't pay too many taxes, make sure that it gets passed on to the next generation, make sure that I'm owning and protecting everything in the right way. So we look at it at different angles depending on where you are and what your needs are. Business owners have different needs, they have different liabilities and issues that we're concerned about. So it's just how we're looking at it depending on what you're doing. But yes, that falls under the same umbrella.
Got it. So you have a choice between a will or a trust, but you pretty much feel that it's best for you to have at least 100,000 or more in
Well,
assets or looking into a trust. Anything
yeah.
1,000, a will would probably be a better option for you.
Yeah. So let me just clarify that a little. So it's not so much that you have a choice between a will or a trust. Like you could start off with a will when you don't have a lot of assets, and then you can add a trust later on. But also when we do trust, we usually do also include a will. Why? Because remember when I said how your trust has to be funded? So all of your assets have to be owned by the trust. If there's anything new that you know, buy, acquire, come into ownership, maybe an inheritance that we didn't get to transfer to your trust, then there's a will there just in case that you're not left without a plan for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there are tools that you could use together, you know, that you know, build up a plan for you. And so it's not really just like, let me pick one. But, you know, to your point, you can start with a will. And then if you're not over that $100,000 mark but also, you know, okay, you can start with the will and then you could build on that. You could add a trust later, etc. But also I would say, like, if you do have life insurance, then you want to consider that being part of your estate. Sometimes people don't realize, like, if you have a $500,000 life insurance policy, that's basically money. That's part of your estate, you know, so you have more than what you probably think. And so consider things that you may not be looking at, like it's actual dollars that may be valuable. Like, I was speaking to a elderly lady, and we were talking about, you know, her estate planning, and then she was telling me that she has these things that, oh, they might be of value. She had like Michael Jordan trading cards from like back in the day, and I'm like, yeah, we might need to get these appraised because this could really be valuable. So you don't know, you may not know right away that you don't have enough, you know. So
Yes. Yes. So what would you say about what's missed when it comes to wills and trusts? Do you feel like it's more myths about wills?
um okay, I would say that with, yeah, kind of, because with wills, people think that one, it keeps you out of court, like we talked about. They, you know, they think that it's a way to not really have conflict. And then also, they also forget the part that you have to make sure that people know where your will is. That we need the original in order for it to be effective. That has to be filed in court. You know, most states are consistent on that as well. And so, you know, it's like almost like people do the planning and then they put it in a drawer and they forget about it. And it's like, I did it. But, you know, you have to make sure that the people who are supposed to be in charge, they're aware they want to be in charge. You know, they want to receive the assets that you are giving them, things like that. So I think people think like a will is one and done and you're good to go, you know. But there are things that, you know, for instance, if you don't put somebody as the executor, the person who's supposed to be in charge of dealing with all your assets, if you don't put somebody who's like, I guess, fit, you know, like by the court standards, like, you know, responsible or financially responsible, things like that. If it comes down to it, they can determine that person is not appropriate, right? And then they'll have to appoint somebody, and then that's money pouring out of your estate. So it shouldn't be something that you think is like, it's just easy. I'll just print out a document online and I'll just fill it out. Depending on the amount of assets that you have, I wouldn't want to leave that to chance. You know what I mean?
Yes. And that's a big deal because I hate to use this as an example, but even like with Miss Franklin, like she
Mm-hmm.
2018, and this stuff is still going. We're in 2021, and
Yeah,
it seems as if they are nowhere near getting to
coming to an end.
the bottom of
Yeah.
it.
And that's so true. And then like so because I don't know why she didn't do a plan. Like she was worth over $80 million, not to mention like her intellectual property of, you know, her copyrights and stuff for her music. So I don't understand why she wouldn't have done it if she thought it was, the cost was too much. But now, you know, lawyers are getting paid. You know, that's who's making the money off
A
of
lot
her.
of money. Yeah.
Yeah, and the courts. That's who's inheriting her all of her hard work, and that's not fair. And
No.
so, you know, I really feel strongly about this is because our community is not targeted with this information.
No.
Why would they want us to know what we're worth? Why would they want us to know what the value of all of our assets are? Because they don't is the thing, because it ends up going to the court, going through the system, going to the state. And then also if we don't know what we're worth and what value we have, then we're not passing it on to the next generation, and the next generation gets to start from scratch.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's always, we're always trying to catch up because everybody's starting from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah. Always. Every time you turn around, and like we
Mhm.
were earlier about the wills and trusts and why it's so important for you to have a plan together as tight as you can get it, because even in her situation, you had
Mhm.
people coming in, turning in wills, saying, well, she was right. They was right in this
Yeah.
2 days before she passed.
Yeah.
It's scribbled, but the court has to consider it. It's a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess. I mean, they do consider it, but and people ask me that about those type of wills that are written out, and depending on what the state requires, the state that the person was living in and where they passed, depending on what the state requires, they may or may not recognize that will.
Oh
They may,
wow.
yeah,
So
if it's not signed in a certain way or witnessed or notarized, sometimes that's required, then they may not recognize it at all. It could be evidence, but it could also be nothing.
got it, got it. I didn't know it does vary from state to state.
Yes, it does.
And I know it's been at least two that's been turned in that she alleged
Yes,
on her deathbed.
yes, yes.
If they put your name on the deed, do you need the trust?
So if your name is put on a deed, then it just so you wouldn't need a trust essentially. I mean, I don't want to say that blanketly, right? So take that with a grain of salt. It depends on the situation. So
Yeah,
if the person's name is on the deed and they add you to the deed, it also depends on how you guys own the property on that deed. So you can own it jointly, where if that person with right of survivorship, if that person passes away, then it automatically goes to you. But it also could be owned tenants in common. And if it's owned tenants in common, when that person passes away, then their half still has to go through probate, still has to go through, administration, I should say, if they don't have a will. So it kind of depends. And then also, when somebody puts your name on a deed, depending on the circumstances, it could be a situation where now you have a gain, right? So if they bought it for, 50,000 back in the day, or, whatever, depending on where you are, where you're located, and then now it's worth 500,000 or whatever, all that increase is considered a gain, right? So if they add you to it, then you get that gain, and eventually you pay taxes on that. Um, and so now, if they were to leave it to you when they passed, then you would pay zero taxes on that, because essentially you would get stepped up to that value at the time when they passed away. So it's not the best way to do things. Does it? Does it work a lot of times? Yes, it works a lot of times. If it's done right, it works a lot of times. But it may not be the best way. You know.
got it, got it. So,
Mm-hmm.
is there a proper way for someone to write a will? Because I've heard so many different things about the only
Mm-hmm.
thing you need is this. You only need is that. Is there any specific way?
Yeah, I'll tell you like some general bullet points, but definitely you'd want to make sure that you're following what your actual state requires. And so typically, it needs to be in that person's handwriting, in the handwriting that they normally use, right? So if it's a different handwriting, then it's like, okay, well, why was it changed? Why was it different? So the handwriting they normally use, it typically needs to be signed, dated, and it typically needs to be witnessed by two people. And the witnesses need to sign in the presence of the person who was writing the will. So that's generally. There may be other things that's required, and depending on where you are, but generally that's what it is.
Is it more safe for people to just go ahead and get it notarized?
Yes, yeah. So when it gets notarized, it's called self-proving. So it's like assumed, like it gets a little bit of a presumption, is what they call it. So we presume that it actually was done correctly, or that person actually signed, I should say. And so it does add a little bit more strength to it.
Wow, wow.
Mhm.
This has really helped me because, like I said, I work with a lot of clients, and it's always this thing with wills and trusts coming up. They don't know which one
Mhm.
to look into. So I'm happy to have made this connection with you, and I'm actually
Sure.
to have this that I can send them that they can look at. But I have one
Yeah.
more before we leave. I wanted you to speak on trademarking. I know you help.
Okay.
Well, two more questions before
Mhm.
the
Okay.
small businesses. How can we set up for success and
Mhm.
properly our business to leave? Is it going to be that same process?
Kind of. Well, we may use some of those tools also for small businesses to make sure that you're protected. with small businesses, you want to make sure sort of like your foundation is in order, that your business was set up properly, that you have your accounting is done correctly, meaning your tax has been filed and everything like that. You're maximizing the amount of money that you can save. And what'd you say?
Yeah, please, y'all. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to cut you off, but
That's okay.
yeah, please make sure that you have these things in order. And I'm gonna give an example after you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So what was I saying? So yeah, so that's some, those are some things. I would say the agreements, you want to make sure that your operating agreements or your bylaws, or if you have other owners, that you guys have agreements between the two of you, so you know what happens in terms of exiting the business. If you want to leave the business, what happens, who gets paid, what happens with that. If somebody passes away, what happens with their share, their owner, their ownership share. Do you now want to be partners with their family members? Probably not. So you should have those type of things in place, so that if it comes to the point where you need to exit the business or anything like that, or sell, or something unfortunate happens, that there is a plan for that. It's so much easier when things are in writing and it's done up front. And then also insurance. Insurance is very helpful when it comes to businesses. Life insurance. So for instance, if you're someone who owns a business, you can have your business get life insurance on you, because you're the key person, right? You're the person bringing in all the funds. And so if your business has life insurance on you and you pass away, if you're a major breadwinner, now your business can help your family. Now it's not just done. or your business could could buy out you, and you could sell it to somebody else, because the business now has funds to do so. So things like that. Again, it depends on the business, and it depends on what's all involved, but those are just some tips.
Got it. Got it.
Mm,
And thank you for mentioning that, because we have to stop thinking one way, even when it comes to life insurance, because it's more than just a death benefit. You can build
mm,
wealth with life insurance, and you have something that is called living benefits as well, where
mm,
ever have a terminal, chronic, or critical illness, while having your policy in force, you're able to get your policy paid out to you while you're alive. All of that comes with your plan. Of course, you will have to qualify for that plan, but these are things that we must know. And what I was mentioning to earlier when you were speaking, when you were saying you definitely want to make sure that you have your business set up properly. This
right.
is big, because I know a couple that have had their business for at least 20 years now. Now they're kind of in their late
Mm,
50s, but they're having a lot of health issues.
mm,
It wasn't really, we big for writing everything off. Exit strategy is very important. So
mm-hmm.
it's nice business, but now you can't even sell it, because according to your documents, who's going to buy this?
Yeah,
It doesn't look like the business was making any money. And
absolutely.
they're not in a situation where they can just leave the business alone, even though they need to, because their health is pretty much killing them to even keep it going. It's
Mm,
taxing on their bodies. And all of
right.
this is because they did not plan their business right, and they did not have the right things in place to be able to exit their business when it came down to this
Yeah.
age and retire.
No, you make a really, really good point, in making sure that your business is actually looking like a healthy business. And you're right. When we first get started, we're like, yes, we could write everything off, we don't have to pay for anything, but then it comes to bite you, because like if you want to buy a house, if you want to expand the business, if you want, things of that, things like that, you can't, because you look like you're not making any money.
Yeah.
So it definitely has to be a planning strategy where you're like, okay, you may need to do that for a certain period of time, but you need to be like, okay, now as I'm planning on what I want to do in the future, when I do want to buy property, when I do want to, expand the business, how do we incrementally make sure that we're properly raising that income? And of course it should be true, right? But that we're properly raising that income, so that you're able to make those moves, especially for retirement planning. Like, small businesses, we don't think about that. We think that because we're solo or we're independent, that those are not in the cards for us. But you can certainly get health insurance. You can get a 401k plan, an IRA, and all that stuff within your small business. And it's not really as expensive as one would think,
No, No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
That is a big deal, guys. So please do not sleep on having these things in place. And
Mhm.
you mentioned that, and that was kind of one of my situations. A lot of times, whenever you're looking to buy a property, especially like you're a primary resident,
Mhm.
not the time where you can be trying to write all of your income off because it looks like you're not making any money. And
Right.
depends on, of course, it depends on what kind of house you're probably trying to get, how much it costs. But
Yeah.
yeah, even my people, they was like, yeah, Mr. Warren. Well, I was the, they was like, yeah, we can write this off and we can write. And I'm like, no, I can't because I'm not getting the house I want. If you write, if
Write everything off. Right.
yeah. So,
Yeah. So just know that the IRS is gonna get you one way or another.
oh yeah,
So it's just about, planning and make sure that we do things the right way. And then guess what? If you need to make more money, now you know, like, okay, I have bigger goals. I need to bring in more money. Like, how can I strategize around this business to make it more profitable? That's really the solution to, elevating is if you find that it's not working the way that it is.
yes. It's not all about just saving money. Is that's a it too, but we have to make more money. You know.
Yeah.
So much, so many different businesses. Not saying that you need to jump from business to business, because you definitely need to conquer what you have, and
Right.
know, do what you need to do in your business now. Whatever you need to do to market or grow it, but that is the solution. Is making more money, not trying to write everything off, because a lot of times people don't know these simple things. That if you write everything off, it can stop you from being able to get the home that you want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's
Very
a, and the last thing was the trademarking, and we can end with that.
okay. Okay. Yeah. So part of us, doing our asset protection, trademarking the brands that you own and that you create and the value that you create within those businesses, it's an asset, and it's something that you own it once you create it, right? But if you do not protect it, then there's no value in it, right? If you don't register that trademark, it doesn't really have a value that you could use it as a tool to, lease license to other people and things of that nature. And because you have ownership of it, it's something that's like now almost tangible, although it's not really. but it starts to build value and it starts to have equity in it. And I feel like we've been creating for forever, right? And before there was a time where we didn't even know that this thing existed, where we
Oh,
would create things and other people will go and register it and make money off of it. And, sometimes it's your own name, and so it's like you need to understand that these things are assets, the things that you write and create and and perform and all that stuff. A lot of people are starting to understand that now and know that now, but that's one of the reasons why we also include that, because it's important and it's certainly an asset that's valuable. And many people, if you have a business or anything like that, or you create things with your hands, a lot of people are creating things and they're not protecting them or not realizing it. Because I get a lot of calls about people saying that somebody else is using my brand, and I was doing this thing for 10 years, and I'm like, but you never protected it. And
yeah.
if they if they went and trademarked it, then now what? You know what I mean? If you didn't protect it, it's so much harder, if even possible, to overcome that type of thing. So you
Yeah.
have to really secure what it is that what you are building. And it's just like, we're not building just to build. Not just, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. And you're right. The other communities, a lot of times, they protect first. A lot of
Hmm.
like to launch things and get it out there. And then when they get a buzz, then we want
Yeah.
to run. And it's kind of like we're working backwards. A lot of times, they take care of that first before
Hmm.
they put it out.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, sometimes you're starting something and you don't really know that it's going to become a thing, right? Or maybe you weren't even looking at it that way. But the minute that you do, you really do need to step out and protect it. And it's the question you need to ask yourself: do I believe in me? Do I believe in this, what I'm creating? And
Yes.
if you do, then why wouldn't you protect it? Why wouldn't you, cover that?
So is this recommended for people that, like, I guess, have t-shirt businesses that have their own, I guess, designs on their shirts and things of that nature? Do they
So,
need to trademark that, or how does that work?
So it really depends. So I usually explain it like this. If you have something that's like really going across the front of your shirt, or something that's really big and looks more like a design, that's something that is maybe not necessarily needs to be trademarked or not trademarkable. But if you have something that's signifying what your brand is, who your brand is, like for instance, Nike, they have their swoosh, they have their logo, I'm sorry, that's their logo, but they have the word Nike, and they also have just do it. I'm like getting them all wrong. They also have just do it. So, those are three different ways that they're presenting to the public, but each of one of those ways, it's them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're wanting you to have that impression that it's them attached to this brand. So anytime you want someone to have the impression that it's me, like this thing is coming from me, that's the thing that you want to trademark. But if you're creating t-shirts and, for instance, you just have various different, slogans, different, words and things like that, sayings, maybe you don't want to protect that if it's just a one-off or one thing that you're going to do, but it's not the main brand. But like somebody like God is Dope, they have, God is Dope, and it's on everything. You know what I mean? It's on everything. So that's something that you would protect because that is the brand. That is, what the brand symbolizes. So you kind of just have to know like how married you are to it, how much you want to use it, how you're using it, to say, okay, I do want to protect this because this is definitely a picture of my brand, or this is showing the public my brand.
So it's for the serious entrepreneurs, the ones that know they're going all the way in, that,
Yeah.
they're looking to build a business. Got it.
Right.
A lot of sense.
So it's not that it's too early to ever trademark, but it's just that, you have to have your conviction. Like, am I really doing this thing? You don't want to invest in it for no reason. And then sometimes is it valuable? Because you may not want to walk out the entire business, but if it's something that you created that's valuable, you could protect it and then license it to others. If it has a calling, if it has a following, you can do that.
Yes. I love to do these lives and for our community, for our culture, definitely to educate. There's not too many of these going on, especially with this particular subject, because it's a need for our community. So thank you so much again, Sabine, for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here on Instagram at Sabine the Purpose Lawyer. I also have a YouTube channel, Sabine the Purpose Lawyer, and my website is franco-lawfirm.com.
Yes, and before you leave, just real quick, tell them again what everything it is that you do.
Yes. So we focus on asset protection. So what falls under all of that is legacy planning. So that could be wills, trusts, powers of attorneys, healthcare proxies, things of that nature. We help small businesses as well. We help create businesses, expand, protect them with contracts, things like that. So those are all like our protection tools, and also trademarks, which also falls under our protection umbrella, helping you protect the brands that you create. So
thank you so much. Everyone is saying thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.